So, hey, everybody, I'm Ricky, VP of Product. If you haven't seen me, heard of me, I'm a bald man that works in IT. Can you believe it? And then with me is Evan Griffith, not bald, kind of, you work in IT. You'd consider this, right?
Yeah, software, IT. What's the difference?
He works in product as well. And we're going to talk about some pretty interesting stuff. Hopefully, you know why you're here. I hope I know why you're here. We're talking about some ticketing stuff. We're talking about form best practices, the whys, some good examples. A lot of the stuff that we have in mind for today is going to be driven by you guys for questions, examples, questions, comments, complaints, I dare say. Let us know. We can always get to those, and we were going to do some live fire examples. The big one for today is we're going to be talking about Storefront, something we teased in our last office hours, and that Storefront comes down to like literally how we're going to present some version of a store, and we'll cover some of the usuals. So that being said, let's get going, and I'll talk about what those usuals even are. So step one, if you've never been to an office hours, I want to say welcome, thank you. As you can probably tell as well, pretty casual. We don't try to keep this one too uptight, not a salesy one. We're learning about what's going on at CloudRadial, what we've been working on, what we've been thinking about. Obviously, some best practices, and again, driven by us, driven by you, driven by anybody who has thoughts and inputs. If you have any thoughts as well in the industry, it doesn't have to be related to CloudRadial. We're happy to discuss too. And we want to talk, again, with you and us, and sometimes we'll bring in other guests. I'll talk about what we're going to do next month, which is going to be a little bit special. And in general, again, if anything comes from this that we don't immediately answer on these calls, once Q&A gets started, once chat gets started, don't worry. We do get to those after the fact. I usually do some follow-up emails after, follow-up chit chats. And if you're watching this, the recording of this, you're not out of luck either. You can always reach us anyways, and we'll get back to you. So let's start with what we usually start with on these office hours, which is the product update, recapping last month. Last month, we had quite a bit of really interesting things that I'm going to go ahead and bring up, if I may. Let's see. This is the old one from 2020. Probably not the right one. Let's try June 2024 product update. That one. So we're doing a couple of big changes to some of the CloudRadial standbys. For example, VCIO account planner, also just called the planner. We talked a little bit about this last time. It's more fully baked. We hope to have this out. Evan, I know you hate talking deadlines, but like we're going for like a week, 2 weeks tops. This is pretty good to go. But what we're doing,
yeah. I mean, maybe a little bit after this.
Maybe right after this, because we want to open this up. So if you're interested in getting kind of a different view of the planner, trying it out, I'm doing an open beta. So anybody who wants to sign up, it'll be part of the poll at the end of this. Let us know. We're going to put you on this open beta. And Evan, can you go ahead and show what the difference is between old planner and new planner, or at least the first step of our revamping of the planner process for those that missed last month? I'll stop my screen share as well.
Yeah, let me share my screen real quick. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen.
Yeah, put off your Indeed job applications and do just the right one.
Am I sharing the right screen? Does it look like a planner? The
Looks
planner
like
they currently have?
Looks like a planner. Yes, we had to see cards and whatnot. What's going on with that?
Okay, so right now, our planner is, in its kind of first fruition from when it was created. We've added a few things like since it came to be, but what you'll see here is something you're used to seeing. I'm just going to jump right into what the new planner looks like. Hopefully you'll notice a little bit of a difference right off the bat. So right away, you'll notice we got a today button here and a left and right caret. What are those there for? Well, now we're going to give you the ability to jump to different pieces of the planner. You'll also be able to view any cards that are on the planner, whether it's on the current board or not. Really, what we did was created a concept of a timeline scheduling. So you can now use the old quarter offset ability, but you can also schedule use the project dates option, which will give you the ability to schedule start and end dates. Another cool little feature we added that I wanted to show is the ability to actually customize. Remember we were using installed before. Well, we've updated that to be default to completed. But we've also give you the ability to customize this. So under customization, we have these planner options here where you can change what the recommended label is or what the completed label is for those columns. And they actually do use tokens as well. So that'll reflect inside the planner if you decide to make those changes. And then just to kind of wrap it up, another little feature we added is the ability to, before we had this checkbox that allowed you to make something strongly recommended. Well, now when we do that checkbox, you can actually type in whatever notes you want or whatever alert or whatever it is you'd like. So maybe strongly recommended is for you, maybe you want to create a required label for that planner card. So things like that can be really useful just for you being able to organize. And you may notice also that we've given the ability to filter these lists more easily and kind of expanded them as well. So the planner now has an indefinite timeline, and you'll be able to create cards wherever you'd like when you're utilizing the project dates timeline setting. Back over to you, Ricky.
Oh man, we're working our back over to use. We're doing like our weather reports. I love it. Yeah. So to recap, that's right. We've had that request come up a lot, which, you know, the planner, I have it up as well. Again, the difference is if you look, no columns, no timelines, is what everybody has today. That future thing came up because again, we got a bunch of requests from people asking us for expanded 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, however many year views of the planner. Again, we gave you unlimited, right? Now, we kept it still focused to 4 quarters just for visualization's sake, but that's right. And then what Evan's talking about, if you haven't seen it yet, I realized halfway through, I'm like, we're assuming everyone knows what the planner really does. Some of the cards, again, this is today what you have access to, everyone had access to prior to today. You could mark, you know, as being strongly recommended. You can see in the background here, it just says like literally, hey, we recommend this thing. We intended that to be just a simple thing to be like, if there's a core service that you want to draw attention to that's like high priority, you can just flip on a checkbox. But yeah, like Evan was saying, nowadays you can go in and flip it and change it to whatever you want, which means that if you want to have something that says mandatory, if you want to have something that says like strong consideration, if you want to do something that's not in English, that probably would be a good thing, right? You can do that there. So this is part of the project to make this stuff, again, more flexible, not the final thing of the planner. People have asked me, they're like, is this what we've been waiting for? It's like, no, this is step 1 of like, who knows how many. We're doing a bunch more stuff. Are we allowed to talk about the other stuff, Evan? I don't know. Are we allowed to show our cards? I already talked about that.
So yeah, I mean, up next is being able to tie in or just basically show opportunities and quotes from your PSA. We're working on ConnectWise and Autotask first, because those APIs, the filtering usually allow it. And then, yeah, I mean, with the planner in general, there's a lot of ideas that have a lot of votes, and there's some other bigger concepts we're looking into VCIO. So planner is just kind of planner is a piece of an overall VCIO experience we're kind of working towards. More to come on that, though. We don't have any definitive information for that. The other thing I wanted to mention is after this, like Ricky said, we are doing the alpha or beta, whatever you want to call it. But basically that means that you'll have, if you fill out the survey and you check off the box to want to be included, you'll have access for your user to be able to see what these changes are and kind of take a look at anything. And also we will be updating our KB article to provide the information in regards to what the planner does in general, but with also the updated information.
That's right. So there's going to be a lot of updates to our documentation on Planner. Again, for those that haven't used it, thinking about using it, I've wished it were a little bit better. Like that article is going to be a lot beefier than the current one. The current one is literally like, here's a video from me. I don't even look like that, but yeah, that's it. But the one that Evan wrote that is pending posting is going to be a lot more explanatory on all this stuff. And like Mike, who is our mole in the comments, that's an account manager here at CloudRadial. So he is one of them, and he is here to help make sure that you actually have max usage, figure out some good strategies on implementing some of these things, just helping you use the product a little bit better. So make sure you reach out to Mike if you are confused and or scared or both. So if you look at our other little point here, all new CloudRadial Storefront. Usually I save the teases for after, but I want to do it first because people are busy. It's 11:11 Central. Make a wish. I wish we could show Storefront right now. So let's do that. So let's talk about Storefront right the heck now. Because I'm paranoid. Evan, it says product update on your screen, right? I want to make sure before I screenshot the wrong screen for 40 minutes. People are like, embarrassing.
exactly.
But before I do that, I'm going to cut myself off with some news that was brought up to us by our support team. It may not affect everybody on this call, but I wanted to talk about this on this office hours because we're talking about ticketing after Storefront, and this is something a lot of people use. We use the option for Teams webhooks. Again, if you don't really know what that is, I'll show you. Evan and I both will show you a little bit after this. But those that use webhooks within CloudRadial, especially the Teams webhook, heads up. Microsoft is doing a little dirty and deprecating some of the Office 365 calls. And yes, Office, not Microsoft, their words. Evan, you've got the latest. What's going on with that thing? And can you actually pull up the article and show the people to make sure that they know we're not just making it up?
Yeah, let's put it in the link or in the chat.
Yeah, let's do that. So we got this brought up by a bunch of people, and that is, yeah, it's a lot.
Like Rick, let me share my screen again.
Please.
Just gonna keep going back and forth. Now, make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So I sent this a link to this article. Basically, Microsoft is deprecating their 365 connectors. You may or may not. If you use them, you use them. If you don't, you don't. So basically, what a connector is you could create something, and one of those things was an incoming webhook, creates a URL. We grab that. So in CloudRadial, we have a lot of different locations, such as creating a form where you can say, well, when someone fills out this form, I want to shoot off some of the information into a Teams webhook URL or any other webhooks for that matter. So basically, if you have a form that's using a URL that's a connector, it may be a Teams webhook. It could be, you may be using this, but using the URL for a Teams for the connector, because pretty much what CloudRadial is doing is just grabbing that URL and sending data to it. So what we're going to be working on and making sure, really, we're just making sure the experience is exactly the same from CloudRadial when you're using the Teams webhook URL. If we can make it better, of course, we're going to try and do so. That's pretty much it. What you're going to have to do, which I think there was someone already in the chat who said they were,
Yeah,
you know,
my guy Joe, yeah, for sure.
yeah, so I'm sure he already knows why it's annoying. It's because there's no other way to fix this other than to know how to use the new method that Microsoft is requiring, and then copying the URL and placing it into the forms that you're using. Lucky for everyone, is some time for that before that's completely deprecated. And as we know with Microsoft, a lot of times they say one thing, but then they push it back because of this type of disruption could cause some issues. But we're going to be updating some KB articles. We're going to be looking into it from Deb to see if we can give you any more help in regards to understanding what needs to be updated or where. But for the most part, if you have any forms that have Teams webhook URLs, you're going to have to take the new webhook URL that you create and paste it into here.
Philip's asking, I don't know if you've looked into it too much, Evan, but he's got a good question. It's like, can you send data to the email address for the team or channel, or is that also being deprecated? Is that the main thing or just the alerting functionality? I don't even know.
Can you set an email address still on Teams channels when using the email instead of web?
Joe says it's still in effect. I
yeah,
believe.
so that you can. He wasn't asking, he was saying, yeah, they're not, yeah, that's right, because that's not a connector, that's just the email that's assigned to that team. So yeah. If it's an email being sent, it's an email being sent.
Which, again, for CloudRadial purpose, like why it matters to us, like Evan was saying, it's like a lot of people use those Teams connectors in tickets for sure, because they also want to, cross tag, show tickets have come in or whatever. We see a lot of that usage in like feedback. We see, I mean, it's annoying everywhere. This is an industry-wide annoyance because, again, a lot of people want to live out of Teams. They want to make that a central command. I don't need to tell you guys that. It's just annoying. So we have to deal with that too. We want to make sure
a lot of people don't know how to use Power Automate, including MSPs. There's usually one or two guys that knows how to use flows and automate. So if those guys leave or aren't available at the time, it's going to be fun when Microsoft does this.
Not 100% sure as to why they decided to do it, but I think that article says it. Correct me. I think it's supposed to be like October-ish whenever it's done. And Jim, yeah, we were looking at that too. So Jim asked an important question saying, can we see where you're using the webhook? and or if you're using where we're doing it. The reason I brought it up now in July for like an October thing is because between now and then we want to make sure that we have ample time. So if it doesn't exist, we'll probably find some way to migrate, or at least let you know, maybe drop an advisory in there. So if we don't, I don't think we do now. I mean, we obviously have the data of where you are. We'll try to figure out a way to alert you months before it actually happens. So just heads up. We're aware that a lot of people rely on CloudRadial for ticketing, and I want to do as little disruption as possible. So TBD, but soon enough. And Joe keeps telling me bad news. Stop telling me that it's
I
gonna
think we've seen that message too, though. It's very off-putting for sure.
I know, it's like they really love to force you to not do something. I mean, but then again, GDAP took a year and a half after they said it was going to be killed. So we'll see. That this is another pretty big annoyance.
Well, I don't even think, maybe someone could tell us. I don't think GDAP is technically officially off the books yet. Or I don't think it's officially 100% yet. I think there are still delegated admin permissions existing in places.
Yeah, we can still use that. And that's the thing.
Thanks,
it's like,
Joe. Joe's the man. He's got all the info. We need him in.
I think I'm just gonna get Joe to hop on office hours on our side. Next time, just like screw it. But yes. Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on it. And again, like Jim said, it was like we're trying to keep on top of a lot of these things that cause these kind of, it's not a game-breaking disruption, right? It's not going to like destroy the ability for users to create tickets and sever our stuff. But again, we know that as this webinar is about, for ticketing purposes especially, or webhooks from feedback, whatever, it is a big annoyance when you lose visibility on stuff and have to reconnect stuff, even if it's manually, is a pain in the butt. So
Yeah, and to give credit to one of our support guys, Tevin, he actually asked me about, he had already asked me, and we're considering that the idea of how we want those like how we want to be able to provide you information on when something's not successfully being sent. It's just a matter of, figuring out how we can get that done before October.
All right, let's get to, I want to do the main thing, because the main thing is cool. So I mentioned this last time, Storefront, and I'm going to tee it up with, I don't have a big sexy Storefront slide, so we're going to do it on the team slide, because that's what office hours is about. So basically what's happening with Storefront is that we had this idea March, May, sometime, one of the M months. And the idea was that like, hey, makes a lot of sense to try to work in some kind of a storefront. The reason is we've put a lot of work into the ticket catalog of CloudRadial. Again, a ticket catalog is dime a dozen. You can do that kind of anywhere, but we wanted to make sure that thing was really pretty good. And we worked a lot with our automations, and our automations, which is something we've covered in previous webinars, kind of can do the stuff that the storefront, a proper storefront can. A proper storefront is, I know I've used this a lot in explanations, even, showing stuff. For intents purposes, is like Amazon, right? Where you have literally a catalog, you click it, that thing does a thing, and that eventually the end result magic happens, and the end result is somebody actually gets a product delivered to their door somehow, right? Cool. We've done a lot of work with our tickets, specifically our service catalog, which is part of the discussion today. Hey, to try to get that there. Automations, as one of our functions, can work that way. I mean, automations can create opportunities. It can kind of obviously automate some stuff with some fancy code and get you to the point where you do it. But we wanted something that is literally plug and play, turning your portal into Amazon, a storefront. So I think we've done something pretty good. To do it, and to do it well, we partnered with a company called Adaptive Catalog. Those dudes are dope. If you've never talked to them, Steven Yu, or the Stevens, as they're known internally, super smart dudes. And I'll talk a little bit about what they do, but the gist is we're handling the front end interface of how does a client access their portal, their storefront, basically the actual Amazon.com part of it. What Adaptive Catalog is handling is all the stuff that requires a lot of brain hurting code of like, how do you keep the catalogs up to date? What are you even looking at? Are you looking at distributors? Are you making your own stuff up? What does that do? Does that create the opportunities? Does that create a purchase? Like, how does that all work? So merging that stuff together, we wanted to make something that would like kind of flow. Now, because this isn't even like an alpha, this is me showing you a screenshot demo of our developers working on it. We're hoping to have this out again soonish later. And the first thing that's going to happen is when this is actually out, it's going to be a little bit different than our usual ones, because we basically need some heavy hitters to stress test it. So we're probably going to limit the closed beta to like 10 MSPs that want to test this stuff out and see how it all works start to finish. But we've brought in some big guns for it, and I'll show you how it works so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. So what a storefront integration would look like is you'd go down to your integrations list and hook up a storefront. you actually would have a storefront URL itself, right? We'd provision that stuff up with adaptive catalog working together. Again, we're working on the logistics of how all this stuff works. And then what happens is you can see how many users and whatever. There's a couple of different tiers in there because we also know that not everybody needs what we'll call the enterprise. At the basic level, a storefront is a catalog of products. That's well and good. At the more advanced level, like if you're an MSP, you might work with 1 or 2 distributors, or if you get really advanced, you work with like 5 to 10 and or however many, and you're like juggling pricing between them. It's generally a pain in the ass. Like everybody kind of knows that trying to get all that stuff up to date. If you ever want to hear the problem from the horse's mouth, I'd recommend you talk to Adaptive Catalog. They tell the story very well. But anyone who's tried to play price advocate between these distributors is known the struggle. Not only that, like stock, what's in stock, what's out of stock, what's close to you, right? Oh, cool, we found that Dell laptop in stock. It's in Beirut. It's like, oh, darn it, I'm in Alabama. That's not going to work super great. And trying to figure all that logistics out to make that experience of getting these products and stuff put in front of clients is hard. Shipping wise, hard. Getting all that to look and feel like Amazon is very difficult. And again, we've seen what happens when you can put an actual catalog of stuff. If you just see the distributors lists, they have APIs you can query. If you type in Dell laptop, you're going to get 80,000 results, right? Even if you narrow it down, depending on if the search even results without crashing, it's going to get brutal. I mean, you narrowed down stuff can still be 80 different choices. What that means is while an MSP may have the experience and understanding to know what that might look like, an end user for sure does not, right? An end user, if you're trying to get to the point where they can Amazon it, it's really hard for them to know what to pick and make sure that when they finally get to the checkout page, it doesn't say out of stock after a bunch of time, or, it's going to be there in 17 weeks, stuff that sucks. So for what we're looking at in CloudRadial, you set it up, and I'll show a little bit of how the sausage is made. We're going to focus on the user experience now. Once you set this stuff up, basically what's happened is you can put a button somewhere, right? We can do this from the applications page of CloudRadial. I've mocked up something really simple, like you're doing like a modified home page. Obviously, you can make this more complex or simple like I have it here, but basically it has a store. Now, what's happening as well is that user that we have in the store is going to get SSO'd. So single sign-on means that we know what the user is, what company they belong to, the level of access they should have. So we can certainly get as far and complex as like, your admin level people see more interesting things. Your basic level people maybe don't have access to the store or see like a basic store, whatever it may be. So in this case, this user goes in, they click the store, they get SSO'd into their storefront. When they get SSO'd into their storefront, they're going to get hit with a page that gives them products. Now you choose what happens on like kind of like the basic product page. The basic product page is your choice as to what products make it there. Again, we'll talk about how to configure that, but they kind of have the accurate thing. Pricing is dynamic, it's pulled in, and it is up to date based on what's being found. Magic as well. We'll show you that. But they can also search the full catalog at the top. So this is an example of these are super hot products. Let's say this user is like, hey, I want to do a bundle of products. It's not just one laptop or one thing. You want to pre-build stuff for them. If I go ahead and add that stuff to the bundle, it'll go, hey, here's all the stuff, right? Pulls descriptions. It's not just hardware, right? It's software as well. So you're seeing that like, okay, they get a monitor, they get a licensed Sentinel-1, they get a Lenovo ThinkPad. If you can think about marrying this stuff in addition to tickets, which is something we're looking at for CloudRadial, we're looking at something complete. So now an onboarding experience is not just, I need X, it's I need X. Okay, great. Click on this, finish up your thing. Here we go. Let's link you to the right thing. Move on. That's what we're seeing. And then when we add that to cart, right, you can add a bunch of stuff to cart. So I added that. I added another laptop to the cart. The cart's now got 12,000 bucks worth of stuff. What happens now, right? Can they check out? Do they get bounced back somewhere? No, it turns out they can. They can check out. What we're doing for this very instant, at least in this prototype version, is we are allowing them to check out, like this is Stripe, right? So it's like, okay, cool. They can go enter their credit card information, do all that stuff. They actually don't even have to do that, right? For those that offer, maybe you're in a different region, maybe it's kind of a pain to hook up to Stripe. Maybe you don't like Stripe. Maybe you don't like some of those payment processors. It can also simply create an opportunity. So no matter what we're doing through this catalog, the general play is that once the purchase is complete, or at least they go through with it, you have the option to have them check out or not. And in either case, whether they actually put their credit card information or they just click, order, they're going to create an opportunity in your PSA. The ones that Adaptive Catalog currently supports are ConnectWise, Autotask, and Kaseya BMS. But obviously, because CloudRadial supports Halo and Synchro. We're looking at expanding those as well, TBD. But for right now, we know that that stuff's going to come through and again put that opportunity. So ultimately, what's going to happen is it can be a fully closed loop, and the status of that opportunity, you're going to be able to define all that stuff as well. Meaning that if you want to say like closed one, cool, awesome, they self-provision their own stuff. If you want to have some kind of intermediary step to double check, that stuff's kind of flexible. So the actual process is up to you if you want to make it fully closed loop or not. And that's it, right? I mean, there's a ton more to it, but the user experience is literally this many pictures because it should be Amazon dummied down. That's essentially the gist. Now, the way that all the complexity works in the back end, like I said, we got the easy part. We got the Amazon.com. Look at the button, click buy. Adaptive Catalog put in a bunch of work on the actual bundling. And this is where I'm ignorant because I'm not an Adaptive Catalog employee, though a big fan. So the way that it works kind of behind the scenes is you have a huge kind of database of stuff to search for. Now, again, Adaptive Catalog makes this process super slick. Again, if you've ever worked with any distributor looking stuff up, nightmarish, especially for an end user. But for you, like you can see that what it's doing is it's pulling across a bunch of distributors, Ingram, TD Synnex, D&H, Pax8, right? Cool. Then what it's doing is it's looking at whether they carry that stuff. If they do carry that stuff, who's got the best pricing, who's got the best shipping, who's got the best whatever. And then ultimately, it'll also hook up to your PSA. So it says, great, opportunity creation, where are we getting it from? Awesome. As you create these different bundles, we're going to have options inside of Adaptive Catalog to say, put this in my storefront and create different storefronts. So that means that as we talk about client A versus client B in CloudRadial, you might have a completely different storefront options from A to B, from user C to D, right? So it's like the complexity is as simple or as complex as you want it. You can have one basic thing for everybody. Everybody gets custom ones, and that's kind of dependent on your needs, but that is totally possible. We've seen it done. This is the proof of concept. So by bundling all this stuff together, ultimately, you are literally making an Amazon that is more self-regulated than ever because, again, Adaptive Catalog is doing the tough work of pulling the relevant pricing, of giving you appropriate margins on all those things, of telling you what the fastest shipping is, what the best thing, user experience is. So ultimately, all this stuff comes together super slick for users in a storefront. And that stuff is going to be pretty huge because we know that a lot of people struggle with getting that stuff out in front of their clients. And again, our selfish thing is, hey, we want people to use our portal. It'd be really cool if using the portal and generating purchases not only gives you margins on purchasing stuff, but also is genuinely the best way to do it. It's the least wait time. It is a closed loop Amazon of stuff that you have picked as the MSP you support, and they're getting the right stuff, the good stuff. So this is my sneak peek of Storefront for now. As more stuff comes out, like we're going to have more, obviously. We're also planning on doing a standalone webinar. So if you're like, that's it, like, come on, man, I came into this webinar. Don't worry. Me and the Stevens are working out a standalone one where they're going to talk about more specific details. We're going to talk about probably an hour directly related to this and only this, and talking about how it all hooks up. So if you have more technical questions than about this and you're like, damn, that useless man, I know, but they'll be there to answer the tough questions so I can duck behind them in fear and cowardice.
Well, we got a few tough questions already. Want to try and answer. So how international will it be with distributors? I think our first go around is
it's US and Canada specifically because we talked to, so we had our CloudRadial missionary Clayton get us go down to Australia, which, we have a whole different gamut of Australian distributors to work with. Same thing with Europe. And like our plans are to make it international. It's not like we're like, oh, sorry, US only. But like, obviously, like if you look at, I don't know, in Australia, we have Ripe, for example, it's a distributor. There's a completely different set of APIs, maturity between them. We know we're going to get to them. Like it's certainly not a problem, but it's selfishly because Adaptive Catalog and CloudRadial are both US based. We're just like, hey, we have these, we have relationships with the reps and whatnot, so we can work on it. But for right now, if this model works, if everybody likes it, if it's pretty scalable, as long as Adaptive Catalog can end up hooking up to them again with the help of CloudRadial, we'll get that stuff pushed out. But sooner than later. But for right now, US and Canada is the play, and Mexico, North America. But
and then we have Philip had a few questions. So I want to reiterate for Philip especially. So this isn't like the Adaptive Catalog product's not like just an integration with CloudRadial. The entire product itself is going to have your own implementation and setup, and we should be providing that level of connection with ConnectWise. So any concerns you have about you know, the items you already have in ConnectWise or things like that should be.
Those are importable as well. I know it doesn't show it. I'm not looking at the chat, but I'm going to paraphrase. So like part of the stuff of that starter plan, for example, of like sometimes people just need a basic thing. And to Philip's point is like they have stuff built in there. You can barely see it. Add products from your PSA. If you already have bundles built in and you don't need to involve all the complex distributor, you don't need to search all that stuff. That's starter. Like you just be like, bring that in, show them what I got there, bundled up, ready to go. So it's like we don't even need to involve all of them if you don't need to. The question is, once you have that, plus distributors, plus price matching, plus blah, 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 we'll see. But that's a good point. We didn't forget about the actual PSA part of it. We'll for sure allow that as well.
Yeah, and he's also asking about Pax8, how they have custom pricing with Pax8. I don't know
It'll
if,
hook up
like,
to, go ahead, Evan.
well, I was gonna say, I know that we'll be able to hook up to the distributors in Pax8. Are we doing anything custom?
Well, so the way that it works with distributors is typically getting the distributors hooked up to your adaptive, and then we pull from the adaptive stuff. Can be kind of a pain because it's a little bit different, but I think part of that painful process is I don't think it's a generic API. I think it's an API to your instance. So if that price is coming through on your stuff, I'm pretty positive we should be able to get it, but at the same time,
And we can look into that and make sure that question's answered in the
but that's not a unique thing. I think a lot of people work and work deals with distributors. So I think the point is that we may be able to do that just in the nature of the biz. But good question, because again, you're not going to be the first nor the last to ask it. So
Renee asked if we can upcharge with those items. So you should have a lot, you'll have a lot of flexibility. You can
Yes.
do upcharges, you can do discounts, you can do a lot of those things. So
Yeah,
definitely.
that's something to see in the actual adaptive catalog webinar. But the way that it works is, I mean, they literally have like a margin slider that you can put up. So if you want to do something, it's like I want to make 3% on this, because again, we know there's like razor thin margins on like a lot of like software. Like, you know, you're not making a killing on some enterprise licenses or like some basic licenses of Microsoft, but like maybe you are. I don't know. And that's the thing. It's like setting that pricing up and deciding on a storefront, because like we also talked to a lot of MSPs prior to this, going like, if you could, how would you do something like this? And the answer generally was like, well, like in our simple lizard brains, we're like, pricing plus 5% margin, nice, we're done, or whatever. But realistically, what happens to a lot of them is they go like, well, I have like, you know, my gold tier clients get 10% cheaper than whatever. Maybe the margin's only 2% on that, but the bronze ones get cheaper price. Like there's a lot of complexity and difference between all this stuff, but Adaptive has that stuff down pat, and they knew that that stuff would happen. So there's different margins on products, and even I think down to the storefront. So possible for sure.
And then the two last questions are really about timeline. Is there a beta for it?
So
technically, we're doing like a closed beta. We haven't decided if we're doing another open beta in between releasing it.
we're supposed to be getting the open one. I believe the due date was 15 days ago. So we're doing great. So far, we're really rocking it. That's why like Evan and I were like, did we talk about when it's going to be done? And I was like, well, do I tell them that it was 2 weeks ago and we missed it? It's like, no, obviously we're on top of it. We're working on it. So
it's being worked on right now. We plan on doing closed beta like almost in the next week or so.
I would think, yeah, I would think, and like, let's just be super conservative for the people on the call. You guys are office hours homies. I would think like try to set your sights on probably like August. Let's be super like, let's say disasters happen and everyone's sick all the time and vacations. August,
well, there's hurricane season, so
hurricane season, great,
I'm in
great.
Florida.
Our developers in Colorado get really affected by hurricane season every year, seasonal depression, and that's why it takes a while for them to develop this stuff. So. Yeah, but we will. I mean, again, we do plan to have this out sooner and later, especially the closed beta. So yeah, let's put a target on my head for probably the closed stuff by the beginning of August, and then if that goes well and everything kind of is stable, we're again obviously going to work with Adaptive on this, see what their reach is. Again, conservatively, I'll say probably by like September, October, we should have people like loaded up properly and kind of more available in general. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, again,
really
this is a super big one. Again, it's a big problem for a lot of them, especially the bigger of an MSP you are, the more distribution stuff you have to deal with, the more of a pain it is, the more that people are like, oh, cool. But even if you're a smaller MSP, if you're looking to again, put a good storefront in front of people, that starter stuff is going to be, I think it's free on our side, actually. So it's like, it's not even something that's free or super cheap. it's something to look into, to put in front of clients. And I think it just does feel a lot better than the alternative of just
Well,
go fetch
and the
product.
time saving alone for having to build over and over and over again, quotes after quote. And if anything changes, you have to kind of rebuild. Like this is just so cool when it comes to being able to, hey, I just got a new salesperson. All right, we know what to
Bundle,
do.
baby.
Click the sales bundle
Click the
button.
bundle. And again, that's where this is a good transition point for the main thing for this webinar, or I guess this is the secondary, depending on if you came here for Storefront. We're talking about tickets, and that was another thing of like, what about tickets? What's going on with tickets? You know, we have this come up every single office hours. I ask like, what do you want to talk about in the future? And like, we get a lot of people that like something will be really hot for a month. They'll be like, oh man, chat, and then oh man, automations, oh man, this thing, whatever. And then like second or third for some reason is always tickets. And I'm always like, it's second or third. But then I'm like, okay, if it's second every time, it probably deserves to be first now. And I want to talk about it because it's not just about like, did you know CloudRadial does tickets? Most people that bought CloudRadial knows perfectly well it does tickets. That's not super special. I want to talk about the cool stuff. And this is why I like having the conversation of Storefront in addition to the tickets, because as we can see, there is a big difference between lowercase ticketing and capital T ticketing, lowercase t being the one on the left here, right? This is a ticket. It's me emailing my own support thing, help, like ticket. Yeah. Then capital T, the official ticketing, is something that has a form. And aside from the form, even then the form is just one step up from the email, we believe, and we're trying to get to the point where the sexiness of a ticket is like, what automation's behind it? What is it actually doing for you? What information is it gathering that you couldn't through this thing? What, actions is it taking? Is it going to order them an executive laptop bundle through Adaptive Catalog? Like, what can it do? And that's what I want to focus on. So why do you want to focus on your form art, not your art form? Because the more you actually work on it, we don't need to create a billion of them. You don't need to spend your entire rest of your life or putting some poor intern on ticket creation for the rest of their, career. But if you can understand that stuff and really capitalize on it, you're getting a whole bunch of benefits. The two things that we've touted forever are MTTT, mean time to ticket, and mean time to resolution, which again, I'm preaching to the choir, but I have to, because if Jeff watches this and he's like, did you talk about the thing? I have to be like, I did, I'm recorded. Time to ticket is literally like, how fast can a user put in a ticket? And again, you guys are my choir, but like most end users correlate the faster I can put in a ticket, the better off I am. And we all know that's a bunch of hog, right? Because the faster you can put in a ticket usually means the faster I can get somebody emailing me help or texting me help or whatever, and giving me, even if it's really good information, even if they miss one detail, it's like, damn it, now I got to go back and re-get that, even if it's everything but one thing. So mean time to ticket is somewhat useless. Like, yes, obviously there's a correlation between how happy an end user is going, like, I had an issue, I texted a guy and he answered me back. Nice. But the stuff that matters at the macro scale for a business and not just one person is the time to mean time to R resolution, right? So if it takes me 20, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes longer to send this form, and you're like, oh, God, I got to log in and do a thing. But that thing happens and it's resolved, it's handled in 30 minutes rather than 2 days. That's kind of a big difference, right? So that's the better user experience part of it. Again, users have a hard time understanding that. And what we're talking about today is how these two things correlate very much so. And what I wanted to do, instead of just talking about theory, because who cares, is to show it. How do we get the sexier stuff, right? How do we get something interesting? Again, Storefront's big because Storefront stuff is the stuff that we get to go, yeah, there is total value in logging into your portal, because when you email me, can you put the thing together? I'm like, what are you talking about? What thing? The sales bundle. For who? For this guy. He's not even in sales, man. What are you doing? Versus like, go to the portal, put in a ticket, get redirected, click the bundle, click buy. Did it take you 5 minutes instead of 30 seconds? Yes. Is that guy going to get a laptop at his door in 2 days? Also, yes. Much better. In fact, you know what, Evan, why don't you show some ticket stuff? Why don't we go from there? Let's talk about some basics versus some advanced stuff. And this is, again, why we also wanted to talk about that Teams webhook, because there's a lot of tips and tricks to make this stuff supercharged. Not a huge lift for a lot of the stuff you're doing if you're already using the ticketing feature, which, by the way, is the most popular feature in CloudRadial, service cataloging.
I just want to say I clicked on share while you were sharing, and it
Mm-hmm.
said you could multiple share. That's kind of
You
risky.
can, but then your attendees are like, who am I? What am I doing?
Yeah, it seems like a too nice. We got to do a power play. We're gonna upstage right now.
It's like hashtag Team Evan. Well, I want to talk about something real quick before you get into it, which is if you click on any one of those, like let's do order new software beneath for procurement, shall we? This is what you would consider a relatively basic ticket. And I wanted to start the conversation off here because I want to remind everybody that you should have, like what you're seeing on screen should be, with the exception of a couple, because this is our own demo tenant that we use for these webinars. You should have all of these tickets in there. If you don't, we can hand off the ticket catalog. But for the sake of this conversation, a basic ticket form is this. It literally asks questions. And like, we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time going through every single form question option. Like, we're not going to be like multiple choice. Pretty good. Have you checked out drop down yet? Like, people can click that stuff on their own. What we're talking about is how do you turn this into something even more useful? And Evan did. Would it be fair to say you've done near 1,000 implementations by yourself? So I think you've helped a lot of people customize their own forms. I think you've done a lot. He did it for years.
Meetings specifically, probably.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of these. And one of the things I learned from doing them is a lot of what we have right out the gate just needs to be tweaked, and you can utilize it pretty easily. It's just a lot of times things can be overwhelming because you have so much and you feel like you need to do so much. Like some easy examples right away are, all of these report a problem. So if you go to the report a problem, the whole idea of report a problem is really like, something's broken, I need help. The request of services, I want something new or I need something changed. That's normally how we look at it as the adaptive catalog and things evolve. You may want to make this specifically purchases and everything else could be report a problem. So it's kind of up to you. But if you look at our sample content, we really simplified the reported problems for end users to be able to just say, I'm just a simple end user. And I'm literally talking about myself. If my computer's not working, I need to submit a computer issue. I don't really know much more than that. And then all of a sudden we get to that point where if someone calls in and they talk to your new tier 1 guy and their, shadow maybe is working on another ticket, or maybe they're in the bathroom or they're just not there, that phone call a lot of times turns into, hey, let me get your information. If your guys are a little more mature, maybe they have a list of things they need to do. But if they miss one question, like Ricky was saying, all of a sudden that whole phone call becomes another communication effort that needs to happen because there was something that's missed. Was the computer plugged in? Hopefully that was asked. If not, then we find out the computer is unplugged, problem solved, could have been solved quicker. So these forms can really be useful for your tier 1 and for you in general, just to be able to set up just some simple things like when did it happen? What's affecting? When did it start? Who are you reporting this for? That simple. If you want to get deeper into what you can do with forms, what I really like in regards to providing your tier 1 person or just anybody who picks up the ticket the ability to solve it immediately, if possible, is creating checklist items or utilizing even the scripting to where you can build out a script. So for instance, if you you grab a script for at calendar, I'm not fluent in PowerShell, so just bear with me, but it's like, at calendar user, add to calendar, marketing, and everyone's going to be like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? But the idea here is you can actually fill in this script. It'll send it as an attachment to your PSA, and you can tell the agent, copy script, run script, close ticket. And this will show up as checklist items in ConnectWise or in AutoTask. So basically, when this ticket comes in, if someone's trying to just simply add a calendar, they'd go in, say, who do you want to add to a calendar? They put in that email. What calendar? They select the calendar. Then all of a sudden, the tokens are filled in, they click submit, the agent gets the ticket, and now that calendar permission can be added. Just by them copying and doing the PowerShell script. They may not even know. They may be like me, where I have to look up a lot of times, especially when I first started at MSP, what PowerShell scripts to run, and I had to do the plugging in of all the little pieces, and sometimes, you mix them up, so you may be trying to add the calendar, blah, blah, blah. But really, the concept here is, like he said, mean time to solution. So this will allow the agent to do this. You take it a step further if you master automations. Ricky disappeared. Did anyone know that? When you master automations, or at least start looking into our GitHub for automations and things like that, you could then technically create the tokens to give them information. And then all of a sudden you can make a fully automated form that's filled. So that to me can be really useful. We went from super simple, which can still be helpful, to, depending on how mature you get into our portal and utilizing scripting and things, you can get it to be really, just really, I guess the word is efficient and robust, to where your forms can start solving tickets for you. We also have the confirmation tab that can be useful to provide relevant information after a ticket is submitted. And then, of course, all your routing options. We talked about the Teams webhook URL. So if you want to send some information when a ticket goes out, that can be useful as well. So if you ever run into issues with ticketing in regards to what you want to do, really start simple. And what does someone do when they call, and what questions do you want answered? And that's usually the first step. And then all of a sudden, all your tier 1 people are like tier 2 people, and they can start spending a lot of time learning the more technical, hard things, than making sure that they ask and answer the right questions. That's my 2 cents. What do you think, Ricky?
I think that's pretty good. And what I had intended for this one, because I think that we didn't really know where to go, because people say, like, talk about ticketing. It's like, yeah, if you have any specific use cases or questions, I'm more than happy to talk about them. But I think for my own personal anecdotal archives, I want to talk about some flair that comes up, like some cool stuff you can do that I think really makes a difference. So I might take over if you don't mind.
No, you don't want to multi-share?
I don't want to I'm not ready for the competition. Maybe next couple hours we can be like, you can either watch Evan or you can watch me, and we can decide what's more interesting on the fly. But in general, here's what comes up for me a lot. So I want to talk about the difference between these 2 sections. This comes up all the time. You kind of touched on it, Evan, and I think that's good. People ask us, like, is there, like, why have the 2 sections? And Evan said it. This is like no nonsense text, get to the point. This is like prettier. You theoretically have more time. Do these things actually do a different function? No. If you prefer, this happens all the time, so that's why I want to talk about it in office hours. You can turn one of these sections off in your feature set, rename this to ticketing or whatever. If you're still, if you're a big ITIL fan, you just do like incident reporting, whatever. Turn this into a one-stop shop. That's up to you, right? But I think that in either case, what you need to know is the technical differences between the 2. There are none. I lied. You can put like an image with some colors, but that's it. Other than that,
pretty.
It's pretty. It's pretty.
Yeah. One's built like a storefront ish to make it, look more approachable, and the other one's brass.
I'm gonna answer a question that Bob just asked in the comments, and I'll read it aloud, as in addition to a point that I was going to make anyways. So there's the question of, like, when you prepare a ticket form, when you build out your forms, again, you have the majority of these, if not all of these anyways, especially the onboard offboard is huge. And that comes into play a whole bunch for a lot of people. A lot of times people struggle with that just because it's not, again, people all the time are like, do I need like CloudRadial? It's like, no, in the sense that, like, do you need CloudRadial to make a form for you? It's like, no, Google Form, Microsoft Forms exists. The big time saver is, like, yeah, it helps if it looks good and has, if it works, but it's like, does that integrate to your PSA? Can you customize it? So it's like, a couple of tips I would give is, if you're not using all of your routing, use all your routing. This is going to be different depending on what PSAs you have available. So again, like the boards and the statuses, maybe queues, maybe whatever. Take advantage of this stuff, because the better you have it in here, the less work you'll have to do with reporting. Now,
and use tokens.
And use tokens. Again, I won't give a whole spiel on tokens, but if you're like, I don't actually know what that is, that's anything that starts with the @ sign. We can also call them variables if you don't want to use CloudRadialese for tokens. And the more you use those, the less painful it is. And case in point, right? So if we're not having to type in the board on every single ticket, and your process isn't like, damn it, go back and put in tier 1 board, tier 1 board, tier 1 board. If you want to notice that everything starts with default board, you click on that tokens button, you go set your default tokens. So it's like, what is your default board? Oh, my default board is professional services in our PSA. Great. That way, when things change, you change the value of the variable once, not every single token. You're like, that's a cool 3-month project we just made for ourselves. Whoops. That's also why that Teams webhook URL, we're pretty stoked that we use tokens by default. So hopefully you weren't plugging in stuff manually. If you were, we'll figure it out and help you, unclutter that. But that's a really big thing, because again, a lot of the automation capabilities that help resolve a ticket aren't even on the question form. Like, that's the thing. It's like, we're talking about forms, and that's a big part of it. But when I talk about forms, I think about the whole experience. The time to resolution is on you guys, right? Because you guys are the ones resolving it. So a lot of times the resolution can get sped up just if it goes to the right person. So make sure it's not just going to a triage or catch all. You have the power to make it go exactly where you want it to. Spend a little bit of time getting it in there properly, and then the people will have a better, like, you can actually see marked reasons for someone to use the portal to submit a ticket versus something else. If you put effort in your tickets and you make it worth it, then you can literally prove that, like, look, you talk to someone, I got to log the ticket, then I got to triage it, then whatever. You use the portal, it goes right where you need to. You can catch up with it in the portal. You don't have that weird gap where the so-and-so I talked to hasn't put it in the PSA yet. I tried CloudRadial, it's not in the PSA yet. Well, Timmy was on lunch. So once he's done with lunch, I'll put in his ticket or whatever it may be. Now, I'm going to answer Jim's question too, because this is relations.
Yeah.
But Bob asked a really cool question, which is preparing a ticket, right? It's important for self-solve, for handoff. What about AI? What's going on with that AI business? Well, I'm glad you asked. So part of the thing that we want to do is we want to surface up the right tickets for people. Now, what happens a lot is, especially in, like, let's say big mature CloudRadial instances, when you have big mature CloudRadial instances, mature, actually, it doesn't even have to be mature. You might have a ton of tickets. Like, again, like Evan said, we simplified these. The original version of this, I think I still can access it, demo.us.cloudradial, was a lot more complex, which, 50-50. You can make it more complex if you want to. And what that does is it makes it hyper specific, but it also makes it really difficult for you to get into that. Oh, I guess I can't. Never mind. Anyways, there's a huge catalog of tickets. Those that are old heads of CloudRadial will remember that, like, computer wasn't just I have a computer issue. It was like, my icons are being weird. This is being weird. I don't know. Every single one. So when you get to the point where it's hyper specific, what happens then is, how do you surface that up to people, right? And as you build more and more stuff out, can you rely on them to look at the UI? Don't know. So what I think Bob is talking about, I'm literally side-eyeing chat because I'm like, well, I want to talk about other stuff too.
Yeah, we'll
Bob,
get there. Don't worry, I'm here.
good. What Bob's talking about is, how can you surface that stuff in, like, AI chat to, like, bring it up? So we do have an AI chat, which, spoiler alert, I'll talk about at the end, is the topic of our next month's office hours. I'm bringing the creator of said AI chat in, and we're talking about how we're doing it. What this thing can do, besides just, like, logging tickets, is if you have something that's like, I want to log a ticket conversationally, it can, which, again, spoilers, I guess I can go through and do it probably, right? It'll actually start, what problem are you doing? What are you working with? But what happens when this thing is like, you know what, I want to onboard a user? Well, it's like trying to ask the AI chat to one by one and ask you all these questions turns into a real long chat session. So probably better is for it to go like, oh, okay, awesome, we have a form for that. Why don't you go ahead and click on this thing?
Right.
So part of the process that we're working on is getting these things interconnected. So we have a chat, not because chat by itself is cool, because chat is fine, but really what this thing is really more like an assistant, right? And that assistant should help you in connecting that scattered content to the user. So what we're working on is we're getting all of the content in CloudRadial pullable through the chat. So when it's embedded or when it's running somewhere and you have the connection between, you have CloudRadial, you have the portal, and you have our chat, it can surface that stuff up. Today, like literally as of right now, it can pull articles from your KB, which is fine. But what we want to do is we want to make it pull tickets. It can't do that today because we don't have an open API to pull and push our tickets in and out of CloudRadial, but it will. So we're on the same wavelength as you. Preparing those tickets is important. Surfacing them up once you have them super specific is also super important. All right.
Can you go ahead and answer Jim's question, and also kind of show the value of that location, because it's very hidden, but there's a lot of stuff in there. I showed it with the planner, but under partner settings, the account and branding location, there's a lot of stuff you can do.
I'm going to try to answer a bunch of stuff too. And again, if I didn't answer it, like, I'll give you at least a follow-up. So if you have any questions, you're like, damn, that guy never answers my stuff, I'll hit you up in the DMs, which is common. Yeah, can we rename stuff on the left? You sure can, and for a bunch of different reasons. One of them is because you want to make sure that you can actually have your language. Maybe you don't agree with the protocol and whatever. So you go to partner, right? Your little handy dandy control panel, you have your Mac thing pop up and block you. And then you're like, damn, I can't get access partner. Get out of here, Mac stuff. I don't know if you can see my Mac thing. There we go.
Oh yeah, you can see it. It gets in the way. It's in the way.
All right, you can see I'm checking my messages. I'm like, I'm in the middle of a webinar, can't talk. Anyways, partner settings. When you're in your partner settings, you can go over to account and branding. Account and branding has a sidebar tab at the top where you can literally rename everything, which means that if you have the tendency to go, I really don't like so-and-so verbiage, go ahead and rename it. And that's super useful because again, you can not only call stuff whatever, you can actually use tokens here. So like if you're super specific and you're like, hey, that client, they use a different term. I don't know why you would, but why not? And you can set up a token to change it for that one client, but anything you want. So if I were to literally to rename this to whatever with a capital EVER, you can even change some iconography, but whatever. You're going to see that once I refresh this, it should rename to whatever for everybody across the portal. So super easy, super simple, and super useful. So do with that what you will. All right. That being said, let me see if I can speed around this stuff because I know I'm slow. Routing is priority. Go ahead, Evan. Maybe you.
I was just going to say, Joe asked if there's a discussion for customizing CloudRadial visual styles and color coding and things like that by categories. So we're working on UI. We're always having conversation about how to improve UI. That type of customization is definitely something we're talking about. My recommendation, and go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like a lot of people, what they want is like a full-on CSS editor, which we're talking about as well, to see if we can like give you more control because it is super limited. I mean, granted, for sure.
That's actually a perfect segue into what I was gonna say. So like Ricky just said, people are looking for a CSS editor. I haven't had the chance off the top of my head to look and see, but if you go to our feature requests under partner account access feature requests, look for the request that matches what you're looking for. If you're looking for specifically like a CSS editor and you'd like to, you know what you want it to look like, you know what you want it to do, that can be really helpful in expediting, our decision to start working on anything, and also help all of, your fellow partners add their votes and make things have more weight when it comes to what we're doing. So yes, we're definitely looking into it. If there's anything specific you're looking for, definitely fill out a feature request. If you want to go ahead and show them where that button is, Ricky.
One more time, sorry, I was reading Cliff's.
For feature requests.
Oh, sure. You go to partner and account, and then once you're in partner account, there's access feature requests, which Evan, I talked about this a couple office hours ago, but he revamped a lot of this stuff. What this will do is it'll SSO you into the portal. It's kind of weird how we do it. If you try to literally just be like, oh, ideas.cloudradio.com, it'll not do it. It's kind of annoying. But when you click on add new idea, it'll be like, what are you adding to? CSA is portal, right? Portal. And it goes, what are you trying to do? And then it'll.
We actually updated it. You should be able to go directly into if you're SSO with Microsoft.
Oh, good. Oh, good. See, I'm out of touch. Some VP I am. Anyways,
so we have 0 time left.
That's true.
We have a minute.
Yay. Cliff, I'm going to answer you after the fact because I have to look into that. But I know what you're talking about, that what Cliff is asking about a priority thing, which I'll reach out to you. Obviously, I'm out of time. I have a poll. If you can answer it, awesome. If not, no big deal, because I'm going to send it through Microsoft Forms like I always do anyways inside of the product. So that won't be too big of a deal. But the gist is
we probably should have launched that like 5 minutes ago.
Well, that's the other thing. If I go back to my presentation, remember, this is why I'm like, office hours is informal. So it allows me to screw up a lot and people can't fire me.
Well, hey, now, whoever stayed, they get to opt in right now.
And if you didn't stay, you get to opt in later. So it's no big deal if you're busy. I get it. But anyways.
That's like the pre-alpha compared to the alpha,
So I'll break down some of the poll stuff super quickly. Again, are you into the new planner stuff? Do you want to take a look at it for sure? Remember, this is not for your entire tenant. Not everybody's getting it. You get to play with it and see how it all works. And then super simple. Usually ask a bunch of stuff. I'm simplifying it down. What topic do you want us to cover in a session? If I get a topic that we've already covered that, like, oh, last month we did automations. We didn't, but let's just say, what I'll do is I'll just start bringing in bigger guns. I'll start bringing in developers that worked on it. I'm down to make this more interesting so you guys can actually see the mindset behind it. So it's not just me and Evan going like, oh, no, well, we liked this feature ourselves. So let the good times roll. If you want more ticketing stuff, we'll talk about it more, and we'll again even talk to the implementation folk that do it now that are really into it. I might even bring on some of our big PowerShell boys that can talk about that stuff.
And to keep the informality, one thing we did forgot to mention really quick is
I don't think we need to. We don't need to stress the informality, baby. We're there. We're informed.
community.cloudradial.com. You guys had a lot of good information in the chat here that can be useful for each other. That's a place for you guys to like tell each other best practices that you're doing. Share content like tickets maybe that you've created. So anything that you guys want to, if you can make noise in there, we're always appreciative of it.
Yeah. Support puts a gun to my head. I mean, ask me nicely all the time to talk about status. So here's me doing it. Please don't hurt me. And status.cloudradial.com is where things go to get alerted. Is that a sentence? No, that's where you go to get alerted on stuff. That's where you can go to find out if something's acting weird and you don't know. Try that. It'll tell you if there's service problems there. And then
and you can subscribe to it so you'll get notifications.
That's true. I don't want you having that be your homepage. You're like, oh boy, I can't wait to check the status of Cloud Radio today. I mean, you can if you're big fans. But next month, because this has been something coming up a lot, we were going to do it this month, but then we have Storefront to talk about. Cloud Radio chat featuring Chris Dix, the OG homie who is the mind and brain behind the original Cloud Radio chat. Will be on there. We'll be talking about chat automations, how that stuff works, what customizations are available. So that's going to be a super interesting one. And again, because Storefront is a separate kind of product initiative, we're going to have a standalone one. So usually I would have just done a Storefront thing when it's actually out. Look for that. Again, TBD on the dates for that. But within the next month or so, we're going to have the actual adaptive catalog folk and us doing a full-on all about Storefront webinar. So best of both worlds, guys. Pretty stoked. And again, if you missed this, if I'm rushing through stuff and you're like, my chats, I'll reach out to you via email and or smoke signals or pigeons. I have all three at my disposal. Evan, your thoughts? Closing thoughts?
We are 3 minutes over time, so we should probably just go. I have no thoughts.
That's
Other
me.
than that.
Evan's hungry. He usually gets really
I'm surprised we have 43 people. Like I'm all, like, see you guys.
Aren't you chipper? All right, great. And on that note, Evan's surprised that people listen to us.
Well, I mean, they're still here.
You guys are still here. I'm going to end the poll. But again, if you missed this stuff, thank you, Rebecca. If you missed this stuff, and again, you didn't get your answer, if I cut off your poll, answer it in the follow-up stuff.
Yeah, thank you guys a lot. We really appreciate it.
Peace. See you next month. Bye, guys.